In today's video, we're going to be going over a 230% trade on SPX options that our Discord room was able to catch, all shown to you guys so you guys can replicate and get similar results in your own trading. So let's get right into it. So here's my SPX chart with all my crazy annotations and supply demand zones, key levels I'm watching. So quickly I'm gonna try to explain them. So let's start off with this zone here, which is like the longest dated one here. Clearly you can see that this was a demand zone. If we zoom in here, you can see that we were trading, or we were struggling to get past that zone all day. Rejected off here once, rejected off here again, rejected off here again, rejected off here again, eventually got back over it, and then it started acting as support. Previous resistance turns into support. So that's the first zone I have marked there. Then I actually have this zone here. This was just like a high here, and the reason I have it marked is because it was an inflection point. I really like to look at inflection points because usually if you have an inflection point, especially when it had a big reaction like this where it moved like about 4% afterwards, about 3.6% to be more precise, after it waked off here, that tends to come back into play later on. So I have that one marked there. Then we have this zone here. The reason I started marking this zone was because again we got this inflection point right here, and then we dumped. Here you can see it was starting to act like a support zone. So previously it was a demand zone, then it became a resistance zone, then we broke above it, had a big reaction, then came back above it, took a big reaction to break through it, came back, retested it, acted as resistance, similar to what it did here, came back, tried to break above it, it did momentarily, but then came right back down. So you can see it's still a point where people are looking to sell. Then tried to come up here, didn't quite touch it. I was actually looking to take puts here earlier in the day, which that would have been an insane trade right there, from 3,730 all the way down to 2,670s, the high 2,670s, or 3,670s, my bad. I was looking to take some puts there. I even told the Discord about the zone I was looking at, but unfortunately we never fully reached that zone, which kind of sucked there because I missed my entry. But that definitely would have been a nice trade there. And then this zone up here, again, you can see clearly acted as resistance here in the past, acted as some resistance here in the past, and that's why we have that zone marked right there. I've been redrawing this triangle quite a bit recently. I don't put too much importance on this, so I actually might honestly delete it, especially since we've kind of technically broken below it. Originally, I had it marked like somewhere right here. I believe it's not perfect, but I had it like somewhere there. And then we ended up breaking below it, but we got stuffed in this demand zone. Then we saw the bounce. You could say it kind of like came to retest it. It wasn't perfect, obviously. Let's see if we look at that line chart, it'll be cleaner. Looks a bit nicer, but again, it's not perfect. But you can see here, we broke the low of it. You could even say it's like from up here. So yeah, it's not perfect for sure. But somewhere around there, we had a triangle, came down. You could say we came to retest it, and then we broke lower, and here we go, we're further pushing down. So these contracts are moving nice. Okay, and you can see here ticks negative 1,300. Pico has been rising today, so more people are loading puts, and like I said, this is my current target. Obviously I don't think I'll hit today, but within this week I think that's very possible for this week. So yeah, and then this zone here, it was previous support here, and then kind of resistance here. Once it broke below, acted as resistance, we broke above the year. This is like I don't put too much importance on this because this happened like somewhere around open, a period of really high volatility. So sometimes you can kind of neglect the zones, like you don't get a perfect reaction off the zone because again there's elevated volatility, and that's why it's a little bit riskier to trade like the first 30 minutes of market open. You can kind of get those moves that like fake you out. So yeah, so I don't put too much importance on here, the fact that we broke these zones like very easily. Look at that, nice move down, look at that, beautiful. Wow, okay, hold up, give me a second here. Gonna sell some more here on my puts. All right, going to have to update the title. Now the title is gonna be 230% trade caught. Right there, it just happened live. We got our entries at around 5.9 on the contracts, and now they're hitting, they were on that move down, they were hitting over 20, so 230%, wild stuff there. All right, but let's continue with our analysis here. So this was support here, support, resistance. Again, I don't give too much importance to this. Obviously it's still important, but the reason I'm okay with this breaking above this, and then I still thought we were going to see more downside, is again because those ticks, they were not following with what the price was doing. So around here is where we made our entry. We're going to zoom in right now, but quickly before we do, I kind of want to talk about the overnight action we got last night, because that was kind of important in my overall thesis for today. Coming into today, this was market open around here, got a nice move down, Again, came down to this demand zone, bounced off it, came back down, established a higher low. So it was looking pretty good around here. Again, got another nice bounce off the demand zone, came all the way up, almost all the way back up to this previous pivot here. So it's looking pretty bullish here. Actually, this happened after hours thanks to Netflix, but we ended up closing around here in this supply zone. So at this point around here where we started to fade, the fact that we made a new high there but instantly rejected it and didn't get no continuation, came back down and then started, you know, struggling to come above this zone. That right here was the turning point that made me turn bearish. Then we came down, and this was the important part here. This was very important right here. So we're coming back to this supply zone, and the reason is the supply zone again because it was previous resistance here. It was support, turned into resistance, turned into support, turned into resistance. Well, support here, resistance. Was trying to act like it's resistance, but thankfully to Netflix, due to that, it came up here. But all this is kind of, again, similar to what I was talking about earlier. I don't put too much importance to it because it was kind of caused by a catalyst. But when you get a move like that was caused by a catalyst, you can tell that this move wasn't really planned, right? The planned move, I think, based on what we got yesterday, was they were going to stall us here and then start bringing us back down. But then obviously we got Netflix, and that kind of changed things up a bit. But when they came back down to the zone, if we were going to be bullish, this should have held right here, because again, it was previous resistance that should have turned into support, and we should have started bouncing here. But we failed to hold this zone, and then we started breaking down. That right there, if I was turning bearish here, that definitely, you know, switched everything for me and made me definitely want to look for some put plays right there. And then we came down, came to this level, bounced off it, retested, and again rejected off of it, and then broke another one, made a lower low. So at this point, this action is definitely bearish. You know, overall the trend here is turning bearish. There's not too much reason to be looking for like calls or anything like that. And then we got this, which, okay, a little bit kind of invalidated. Again, this was happening in like pre-market hours around 3 a.m. so market still hadn't opened here. So we got this move here, and then it's like, okay, interesting. So you get a low here, you establish a higher low, you break above the zone. So then you're like, okay, maybe I was wrong about this play, but it ends up being a fake out, because then they come back below it, it's not able to hold, and then we dump again. Then we come up here, make a lower high, and then get a nice reaction there. The fact that we failed to turn bullish here definitely kind of was like acted as confirmation to my bearish overall thesis. The fact that we're probably going to come down here during trading hours and try to break the zone, and if we do, we'll get some nice follow through. That's what I was thinking at this point. Okay, then we come here, let's go to market open now. We get a nice pump off the open, but again, ticks weren't really confirming that move. So at this point, I wasn't too like, all right, they're gonna turn us bullish for the day. And I like to wait. I don't like to take too many trades off the open unless I have a very clear like thesis with defined risk. But if we have the chance to make a big move like this, like we're jumping around like 10 points in a candle, you know, there's not a very clean trade I want to take, I'm not going to trade it. So we got this, then we ended up dumping back. I caught a little portion of this, but this zone ended up holding again. There's a lot of support here at the 3,700 level is key area. And then this whole demand zone here, we ended up getting a nice reaction, and then this basically became zone to zone trading. So you have a demand zone here, you have a supply zone here. Bounce out the demand zone, where do we expect us to go? Back to the supply zone. Again, we didn't end up quite hitting that zone. If we did, that would have been a perfect entry for puts, but unfortunately didn't make it that easy for us. So we started rejecting, came back down here, established a lower high, came all the way back down, and then kind of started bouncing. At this point, action got pretty choppy here, so I didn't trade any of this at all. Really, once we get trapped in the middle of two zones and you don't have a good entry, you can still obviously scalp this for some moves here, but it becomes a little bit tricky. The really good entries are going to happen in the zones, right? Where's the best zone you're going to get calls out? Somewhere around here, if that's going to happen, right? Not every trade is going to end up working out, but it would be smart to take calls here, place your stop right under the zone, and then you have you're risking, like let's say you get an entry around here, you're risking that for the potential to trade back up to the supply zone. So that's your risk reward right there. Pretty favorable stuff. But let's say you make an entry on calls around here, you don't really have a defined stop loss. Obviously you can put your stop loss here, but then you can get stopped out on a move like this. And what if it came down here and then came all the way back up, right? That's gonna be some frustrating stuff. So while you're trading within the zones, it's kind of hard to get ideal entries. And again, if you're scalping for really fast moves, like couple minutes, under 1 minute scalps, then you could still obviously do it. Like you can catch a really nice move here on cause if you time that perfectly, but it's just a lot harder, right? And if you're looking for that bigger move, it's going to be hard to catch it when we're trading in the zone. So here we're trading in the zone, but if you look at the overall action, what was the trend? It was still pretty bearish, right? Because we have a high here, lower high here, another lower high here, another lower high here. So it's kind of like a triangle forming up, something like that. The bottom isn't as clean, but you can say it's somewhere around there. So you can say we have like a triangle forming there, but you can just see like the overall trend is like we're slowly coming down. We're still getting these like pops, but we're overall slowly coming down. And then over here, as we start nearing the demand zone, obviously there's a lot of orders around here, and you can see that by the book map. I sent a screenshot earlier, so I'll try to place that in the video for you guys to see. But you can see there's a lot of liquidity down here. There's a lot of orders waiting to get filled. And obviously we've established this as a very, very clear demand zone. So what's the most likely outcome to happen from here? Obviously, like I said previously, this would be the zone to take calls from, right? You have a good risk reward. It's a demand zone. But the reason why I started looking towards puts instead of getting calls is because the amount of times we had already tested the zone, and because of the overall trend we were seeing and the ticks we were seeing earlier in the day. So you can see here, previous resistance zone, supply zone, turned into support, 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 support. But you can only bounce off a zone so many times. Like eventually these buy orders down here are gonna run out. And if they were buying down here and we start breaking below that, they're gonna have to start selling their position for a loss here because it's breaking below that zone. You know, so if like traders were buying here, which you can see they clearly were, where they're gonna stop out if they're wrong? Well, as we start breaking below the zone. So as we start breaking below the zone, we're likely to get a reaction. And where are we likely to be headed from there? Or where's our next key zone? Our next key zone is somewhere around here. That's where our next kind of like demand zone is. So that's a very key inflection point. So here you have a choice to make. Are you going to take calls for that demand zone to hold again and come all the way back up here? Or are you going to take puts for it to possibly break? And if you're taking puts here, you're taking them kind of prematurely because you haven't broken through the zone yet. But I was willing to take that risk of being wrong because the risk reward would just made too much sense, right? And again, how did we know we were going to get a decent reaction if we broke below this zone? Just based on the fact that it was such a key inflection point. You know that once you break through that zone, you're going to get a nice reaction. And why did we decide it was puts instead of calls? You know, like you would typically take, like here, it would have been smart to take calls. Because of that, because of the fact that calls had worked in this zone so many times before. So eventually those orders run out, and I felt based on what we were seeing that it was going to run out. Again, it stems all the way back to the futures overnight futures action. The fact that this happened, that kind of made me feel like, all right, if we come back to the zone, it's likely getting close to the time that we're eventually going to break below it, because we're failing to take advantage of the opportunities to go bullish. So where were the chances to go bullish? Well, here was the first chance. We cleared the zones. All right, time to go, right? We stalled, and we failed. Okay, and then we got one more golden opportunity here to turn bullish. We came up and it looked a little bit promising, but then it failed again. Where was our last key area to turn bullish for the day? Right here, right? We got a nice move here, but didn't even reach the zone, right? We weren't even able to reach the zone. If we were able to reach the zone, break above it, turn this into support, obviously there's no point in taking calls. But we didn't. And then we started establishing this trend that was like a downtrend here, where we started establishing lower highs. So I felt like, you know, buyers were trying to run thin. We weren't getting that many positive ticks throughout the day. Most of the ticks throughout the day were overly bearish. And so once we came to the zone, I took the risks that we were going to break down, see a nice reaction. So I took puts here, and obviously I didn't know that it was going to work out for sure. There's always a chance that the trade's not going to work out. So you always have to be ready for that. We took our initial entry around 908. So on this candle right here, as we broke this low here, I ended up jumping into some puts there. My original entry was 5.9, and I placed my stop at 3703, which I told the Discord. The reason I placed my stop loss here, let me get rid of this to make the chart a little bit cleaner here. Whoops. I'll let you guys know why I placed my stop loss there. Sorry, I can kind of get rid of these lines now that they've kind of played out. Okay, so you can see here, what was this acting as earlier in the day? Support. Kind of broke down below it, but was able to break back above it. Support. So now we broke down below it. If we break back above and start heading into the zone again and breaking above, that's not going to be a good sign. And especially, as you can see here, price started establishing a little bit and it wasn't able to even reach that zone, so that was a good sign there. Then we ended up breaking down. I took my first profits around 7.8, I believe. I took my first profits when we got this move down, and then we ended up bouncing. I kind of was like, all right, whatever. It's a demand zone, they might hold again, but I still left my stop loss up here, and I wanted to see how we would react in this zone. We came up here, looked like we potentially might get a reversal here off the lows. This demand zone might work again, but then we got this big reaction, and then we broke this low here. And at this point, I was like very confident that we were going to break this demand zone, which did end up happening. So around when we got this reaction, contracts moved up to like around 12, I believe, and I ended up moving my stop loss wherever the yellow line was at before. Let me back it up a little bit. Right there, that's where I moved my stop loss to. My first big target when I first entered the trade was this yellow line. Not sure where this yellow line is actually. So that was my first target, but I ended up taking profits a little bit early just because the contracts had a nice move, 5.9 to 7.8. I was willing to take some profits because I also knew this was a demand zone and it's a potential that trade would fail. So I wanted to take some risk off, lock in some of those profits. That way, at the end of the day, if I had to end up getting stopped out, it would end up being a small loser or like break even trade. Always smart to do that. But then we came down, like I said, at this point, my confidence grew. Ticks were trying to get really negative at this point, and then we saw the nice flush down. And then we got a nice little bear flag and an even further push down. And at this point, contracts reached like 21 bucks. And I took more off there. I obviously scaled some along the way. I think I took my exits. So I took my first exits at 7.8. Then I took some more off at 9. And then I took some more runners around the 19 and 20 area down here. That was my reasoning for taking that trade. That was my analysis. Hopefully that helped you guys out. And hopefully if you guys were part of the Discord, you guys banked on this trade. It was an absolute nice trade right there. Right now looking like we might back test this zone and then come further down and eventually come test this zone down here. I do think that's going to hit. So it might be time to reload some puts. We're going to have to see how it reacts up there. But for now, it looks like we're going to bounce a little bit there. We also have Tesla earnings tonight, I believe, or after hours today, so that could influence some things. So might not want to swing too heavy tonight. Obviously we're entering earnings season, so it's gonna be time not to swing too much unless you're taking those lottos on the earnings, but I don't really recommend that. Other than that though, the intraday action should be pretty nice here, so that's what I'm looking for right now. Retest of the zone, potential to go short here. I'll only go short though if I start seeing it look nice. So if price starts doing this and then we start like doing that, at that point I would be willing to take puts, put a stop loss around here again, right above this whatever we consolidate here, and that would be a nice risk reward because I do think we'll be headed down there again. I don't think that'll happen today, but probably around Friday we could hit that zone, given Tesla doesn't surprise on earnings or anything like that. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more great content like this. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. It's been me, Zero, and I'm out. Peace.